happy today. I am William Brown from IamWilliamBrown.com. This is Disconnect to Connect, one word conversations. The sponsor of the show is I Am William Brown, and I wanted to share with you one of the things that are available at I Am William Brown is our U cards, and I use our U cards for this show purpose, for setting intentions for today, and so my I Am card was I am complete. My You Are card is You Are full of joy. I always like when I get that one. It makes me smile a little bit. And my quote card for today is Be you, do you, for you. And that's a quote that I have for myself, and it reminds me to just be okay with being myself. So you can get your own U cards at IamWilliamBrown.com /store, and other you products, from a journal to the Beyond the Shell, finding you beyond what protects you, and the journey to stay you. The funny thing about the journey to stay you, my guest today is a character within the journey to stay you. So maybe that will come up within the conversation. So I will introduce the word that we have for today. And it's an exciting word. It is reinvention. And I was glad that this word came up for today's show because of Giovanni, and who he is and how he's showing up in the work that he has as a transformational leader. He has an incredible conversation of helping people access the leader within, and just really not just showing up in your work, but showing up in your life. There's a lot of things that he has been able to do with not just individuals and people, but countries. And so within that and that framework, would love to bring in my friend and have a conversation. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. How are you? I'm telling
I
you, I
am
love the
doing
setup that you
great.
have.
Yeah, it's I'm still it's like a new house or a new car. It still has that new car smell, and
I
still
love
kind of working it out.
a new car smell. I love this setup for real. I love this work, social self, freedom, fear, compassion. One word. It just feels so cool.
Right. So it's great. So, hey, so this is a time where I ask my guests to introduce themselves however it feels comfortable to them. I mentioned some things about you, but there's so much more.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So I guess a little bit about me. I was born in Colombia. That's where the accent is from. Then I also lived in Belize for a number of years. I finished up high school there. And then I moved to the US maybe 20, 21 years ago. And I went to school here at some point. Graduated in international affairs and then masters in leadership. And I have, as a result of my transformation, I have taken on the field of growth and development, and later on the field of leadership in the context of businesses and really supporting people to create high performing teams around them. I'm really committed that people win the games that they play in business, that they create an environment where people love to go to work. They create an environment where people are connected to high standards, and also that people make money, right? That people get paid more, they make money, the customers feel that they are part of a movement when they go to a company, or they're part of a mission, if you will, not necessarily a movement, but a mission. And that's my life. I have a book out in Spanish. I've got to translate it. It's called The Mind of an Immigrant. And currently, as you know, I lead transformational leadership courses. I have a 3-day course coming up in August, and later on, I'm going to talk about, if you let me, about a small workshop I have on Sunday coming up.
Okay. Well,
Plug in.
wonderful. It's like within the conversation, a number of things can come up. So yeah, I appreciate talking about your work and everything else. So how does the word reinvention um, show up for you?
Reinvention for me, it's a big word. It almost encompasses everything that I do and also everything that I, in some way or another, try to get other people to plugging into, right? For the most part, on an everyday basis, people wake up in the morning with some goal or some long vision that they want to achieve. And a lot of us, the majority of us are kind of resigned and kind of cynical about it. We don't really think it's possible. We're just gonna do what we do every day. But this big goal or this big dream, not really. So I say, in order to take on something that inspires you, that really takes it out of the roof, if you will, you need to reinvent yourself. You
Right,
need to kind of let go who you know yourself to be. And that's a big task. It's a big mountain to climb just to
right,
even recognize that you have put yourself together and then to let go who you have put yourself and create another human being within you. And that for me, just in a few words, is the context of reinvention.
right. No, I totally get that. It's kind of funny because I embraced this word, but there was a part of me that was rejecting this word because of the re part, you know? I really want to embrace just the invention, just saying that I can cause my life, and just like if this is not working, I can cause something else. So it's not I'm redoing it. For me, re is like I'm doing it over, right? I'm restart to do. It's like, but the more that I can stay in this forward motion of, okay, I invented this great thing, and now it no longer works. I'm going to invent something else. And so it is that type of thing. So really, how can I embrace the re part of the invention, looking at something again that I've created, and expanding on that without getting caught in it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you're thinking a little bit about too much, right? I mean, just a little bit, right? What I really mean, in some way or another, right, without complicating it, in some way or another, as we were growing up, we were inventing ourselves. Now, it's,
Right.
it's difficult to see it, right, because life was happening, and for the most part, people are reacting to life. This happened, and therefore I do this. This happened, and therefore I do this. I
Right.
went to high school, but did I really create that for myself? No, not really. My parents live in this neighborhood, so therefore I had to go to this high school, or my parents moved to another country, therefore I had to go to that country, and then I
Right.
had to go to the high school. So I wasn't really inventing myself.
Right.
But when one takes on a journey of really discovering oneself, you begin to discover that you did invent yourself. You did start creating an identity for yourself
Right.
based on the circumstances that were around you, right?
Right.
And that led you in some way or another, that led you to be where you are now. Now,
Right.
there are some goals, there are some dreams, there are some things we want to take on that the person who I am now will unlikely do the actions to do that.
Hmm.
So therefore, the word reinventing myself, reinvention, just kind of gives me a place to look. Well, how do I reinvent myself? If I have already invented myself, how do I do it again? How do I reinvent myself? Now
Right.
that's a mountain. That's a mountain to climb because you and I have neurological patterns that puts together the way I act every day.
Right.
However, there is a way to do it. And that's what my whole life is about, and really supporting people on how to reinvent themselves, how to restructure their own mind so that they start taking new actions. And therefore, at some point, they really do become a whole new human being.
Right. No, I look, I have, you know, I talked to you many times, and you get that I create many rabbit holes for myself, and because that's, I embrace that curiosity of not just in words but concepts and things. So the more that I'm able to kind of say, okay, what does that really mean? or what am I really seeing in that? And really there's a part of that embracing that curiosity about myself that causes me not to reinvent myself, but just to accept myself. The more that I accept my accept for me, the more I accept myself fully, the more I can show up in a lot of different ways, a lot of different things that I didn't think I had access to before. And I think it's around the same vein of reinvention, but it is just an awareness, a deeper understanding, a deeper appreciation of yourself that creates or gives you access to the things that you're creating.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think when you touch on the subject of accepting oneself,
Hmm.
that is a big subject. That's a very big thing. That in itself is a reinvention, given that for the most part, when we were growing up, the social conversation everywhere around us, it's about becoming somebody else. You've
Right,
got to, there's always some kind of ladder to climb. You got to dress differently, or you got to look like the commercials, or you got to live in that neighborhood, there's always something else to become, right?
right,
And so we don't quite notice it, but it starts kind of filtering in this kind of view about oneself that one is not enough.
right,
And so we get to this adult place of having family or starting a family or whatever it is that we're up to. And we're still not comfortable with ourselves because we're looking to become somebody else. And so for me, in my world, right, I look at the word reinvention as an opportunity to start seeing oneself as whole and complete, the way you are, really
right,
work, however you are, the size you are, the skin you
right,
are, the color you have, like whatever it is, however it is, really works for something. For what?
right,
To just love myself. That's, if the journey of my life is to find love for myself, that
right,
is a rabbit hole,
right.
because the identity itself will always be unsatisfied. I
Hmm.
can't, I have yet to meet someone with all the money in the world or all the beauty in the world, all the fame in the world, who still don't think they're good enough.
Hmm.
So I think that the anchor is, the powerful anchor is to look at the world and say, well, let me be a contribution for something, a legacy on something. Let me do something for this world that before I die, I was
Right,
able to put the puzzle together a little bit better so that human beings have a better world.
right.
All of that's kind of a contribution. One word for that is contribution. And I say that it takes a little bit of reinventing oneself to do that.
Right. No, I'm getting that.
Do you like the word reinvention a little bit more now?
I'm taking it on. Like I said, it occurs to me in so many ways, and I'm just sometimes that's the one thing about this one word conversation, is that I've recognized that it can only take one word that will cause a connection or a disconnection in your relationships, in our communication. And sometimes because you'll use a word reinvention and it occurs to someone a certain way and they don't even have the listening for how you're bringing it up and how you're pretty asking people to do something big in their life, and it's like, no, I'm not doing that or anything. And so they lose a listening for you. So I am going to just stay within it. I'm still kind of figuring out how reinvention is kind of showing up for me. But yeah, it is something that it's a part of it, but it's not bringing me access to a level of movement. There is something else that's connected to that. There's a distant cousin of reinvention that kind of moves, helps
Yeah,
me
no
along.
problem,
So,
right? Like, really, no problem. I think you and I are both connected in the same outcome anyway, which
right,
is contribution, which is love for one another and love for
right,
others, and really supporting and giving a platform for others to find strength and find voice, right?
right, right,
I think another way that I see reinvention is, for me on a personal basis. I had my first son when I was 26 years old, right? And both of my children, I wasn't necessarily in a like planning them, like, oh, I get together with my
Right.
girlfriend. It's like, we're going to have a son in 9 months and we're going to try really hard. No, it was
Right.
more like, I got to tell you something, by the way,
Right.
and so it was clear for me at the time, for my first son, for Stefano, was I need to reinvent myself. Who I am
Right.
now will not be a match to the opportunity of being a father.
Right. Got
So
it.
I took on this thing about reinventing myself, right? I just took it on. It was
Right.
clear for me. Then my daughter now, who was born 3 years ago, 10 years later, way more mature myself in so many ways. I just a better human being to take on being a father. And I still knew I need to reinvent myself for the
Right.
opportunity of a new kid.
Right.
Who I
Right.
am is not a match for what I would love to be for a new person in my life. So that's
Right.
how reinvention comes to me, and I'm really aligning myself. And those who don't align with reinvention, something's wrong with. I'm just kidding. And
Now you just made me wrong, right? No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. No, I just really get the one thing that's coming up for me, and because you mentioned that you wrote a book, as an immigrant, how does reinvention occur to you as an immigrant? How did that kind of take on life to how you showed up in your home country versus showing up in the States?
man, that I really feel lucky. God, I was on God's good side in the way He gave me the journey of my life. So, because I was born in Colombia, and both of my parents were really young. My mom was 16, my dad was 17. He was about to be 18. So I grew up with my grandmother. And so the conversations in the house, the environment in the house was of a grandmother. So there was a lot of love, there was a lot of wisdom, there was a lot of mindfulness, there was a lot of impeccability in her words when she spoke with me. Not quite like most parents that go around and just say whatever they want, they look at whatever they want on TV, not like me, not like me. It was like my
Right.
grandmother, right?
Right.
And so I grew up in that environment, and it makes sense as a young mind. I was kind of resentful and upset that I didn't grow up with my parents. I felt a little bit like an orphan in some way or another, right? Like a hidden orphan. Like I was a secret orphan. I wasn't really
Right.
an orphan, but I was in a secret closet, right?
Right.
But however, it was a really perfect environment to get in this kind of a cocoon of decency, if you will, right? Of good people.
Right.
And so then I moved to Belize to go live with my dad, and then I was able to take on another world, living with my dad and his wife. That was a couple. Like that was not grandmother talking to his grandchild. No, that
Right.
was a couple discovering themselves and going back and forth and trying to win the game of being a couple, and who's smarter, who has more wisdom, all of that. And in the midst, having other children, right? So that in itself, I needed to see life differently. I wouldn't call it reinvent myself. I didn't have those words, but I needed to see life differently so that I wouldn't judge them, so that I wouldn't resent them, so I wouldn't bring judgment towards who they are. And
Right.
then I moved to the States, right? So there was an environment of Colombia, then it's an environment of Belize. And Belize is very Caribbean, right? It's
Right.
very like Bob Marley,
Right.
it's just like cool. And then,
Right.
there is the US, and the US is entrepreneurship. You can do anything you want. If you work hard, you can do anything you want. There's nothing that's holding you back. And you have overwhelming evidence of people who are in the street like me, selling newspapers and eventually having a house, a kid, and a huge empire, right? Kind of like living
Right.
my life now.
Right.
I didn't have that in Colombia. I didn't really have that as a conversation. I certainly didn't have that in Belize. You could be anything you want. But in the US, even if you live in dirt, there is a
Mm.
conversation, a social conversation that says you can do anything here, right?
Right. Hmm.
And that began to penetrate, interrupt the patterns in which I grew up in.
Hmm.
And I started noticing that I liked them more. So I started looking at how to reinvent myself so
Hmm.
that I could embrace that movement of you could do anything you want in the US.
Right.
And eventually I did reinvent myself. I went through a difficult time, like a little bit of addiction, a little bit of a lot of things that young people go through.
Right.
But then I really took on reinventing myself. I really took on or creating myself differently, right?
Right.
When I discovered that it was possible, I wanted to give it to everybody in the world.
Hmm.
Genuinely, I want to give it back to everyone in the world. So right now, I'm finding ways to become better at having people plugging into this word reinvent yourself or the word
Hmm.
create yourself,
Right.
create yourself. And as an immigrant, it was just a beautiful platform to the life I have now.
No, I mean, I've heard part of that story, but the way you said it so succinctly, I get it now. I really get it. It really landed for me right there. And it's like, so now how reinvention is showing up for me. I grew up, in the States. This is my home country, but I grew up in the projects, in the inner city projects of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania,
Right.
which some people may feel is another world, is another country. It is not, it is outside of that conversation of you can do anything, right? It is like, this is what it is. This is the horrible, bad hand that you were dealt, and just deal with that. And so for me to really not just listen to those conversations, but have a listening for the larger conversation of entrepreneurism and you can do whatever you want and you can be whoever you want type of thing. The fact that I even had access to that caused struggle, difficulty in my life, a difficulty in my relationships. I mean, it comes up in my book, The Journey to Stay You, because of the surroundings that you mentioned before, the people that I was around. It's like, why are you thinking this? Why do you think you can do that? What do you mean you can do anything? We can't do anything, so you can't do anything. Type of thing. And so, really, have the listening of reinventing myself cause me to be who I am today, to take on the conversation of living beyond our labels and sharing that with the world, right?
Yeah.
And so the more that I kind of embraced or kind of accepted that my current reality or the current conversations that we're having around me wasn't my life, it was just where I was, where I was dropped in, right? And it's like, okay, all right, let's figure out not a way out, but a way through, right? And I think that's what, for me, how reinventing is showing up, that it's like the adaptability that we have in our lives that kind of keep us moving through it as we live our life. Am I getting
Mhm.
closer?
Yeah, no, you're totally connecting, man. Thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Totally. Now you're getting warm up for this word reinvention.
Right. Hey,
I like
it
it.
only took about 20 minutes, right?
Thank you. Thank you for taking it on, right?
No, and
You
and
know,
I
I
think it. Go ahead.
every now and then I get to go and speak in front of millennials, right? Not
Hmm.
that I'm not one, but or I'm just out of the range of being a millennial. So every now and then I speak to people young, in their early 20s.
Right.
And I talk about the word reinvention. It doesn't sit well with them because they're creating themselves, they're inventing themselves. They're like, I don't want to reinvent myself. So I don't
Right.
really use the word reinvention with a mind who is starting to invent themselves,
Right.
right? Doesn't quite sit well. However, after a while, they get why reinvention is critical at any point of their life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, I get it, especially with the pandemic and a lot of things that we're dealing with right now. There is this reset, reboot kind of, things are reopening, and really having a question or an inquiry of how are we going to be after this or doing this, pandemic, or doing the racial unrest, or kind of the conversation that it's having around there. And it's like we can either, I guess, fight the reinvention, or the things that are coming up, or we can embrace that and move into that, and just get more access to things that I think we didn't think that we needed, that may be available to us now. I think it's and I think sometimes within that conversation around reinvention, it is, for me, it was, okay, nothing else works, so I gotta figure something else out. So I gotta just transform into something else so I can keep it moving. But you don't have to wait until there's nothing else to do. I believe there is, within a slowing down or a pause, there is another way of showing up that you get to choose.
I want to talk to you a little bit about what we're currently dealing with, and how I see the opportunity. Currently, we have a social conversation that it's really real for a lot of us, and it's really, in some degree, many would agree that it's moving in the direction that we have been working on for many years after what happened with George Floyd and the police officer. And
Right.
so we're even talking about, as a social conversation, that there is this systemic kind of structures, right, that keep in place a certain group of people from growing up, right? And it's a social conversation, and more people are paying attention to it. And some of us, like, we're not looking at it from the context of blaming or trying to guilt somebody or shame somebody, but we're looking at the context of, well, let's look at what are those structures, right?
Right.
And how do we unify ourselves? How do we
Right.
reinvent ourselves without having to put more blame or more guilt or more shame on the conversation, given
Right.
that usually people will start just defending themselves. They will no
Right.
longer look for a truth. They will no longer look for a common ground. They will just defend themselves. So
Right.
as a result of all that's happening, we're going to have a town hall this Saturday for the people who are listening today. And it's a town hall, and it's called Black, Brown, and White, speaking on the power of diversity, ending inequality and injustice in America. And the panelists are like phenomenal. We have an anchor from Univision. We have an Emmy Award winner, Hank Stewart. We have um, another unbelievable entrepreneur and a life coach, Sheila James, and another police officer. He's a retired police officer who was in the army and worked in Afghanistan. And also, just now, he was also in the National Guard. He's also going to be, he's a white man, and he's going to be also in the panel. So it's going to be a great conversation to begin to see,
Right.
to begin to create to a seed of what my view, to leave a seed for those who are there to listen, um, that perhaps the view I have of others, the way I see other people, has been a lot shaped by the conversations of people who are no longer with us.
Hmm.
Yet I still behave in a way like if it was real. And that's not in the sense of blaming other people. No, like personally, like, oh my gosh, I am doing this. Like, oh my gosh, I see people from different walks of life, different color, different races in a particular way, but not necessarily because of my interactions with them. It's because of something I heard. And that maybe that will begin to create a conversation for leadership and for moral accountability that is not available until I take responsibility for something. So anyway, I hope that you can make it, and I hope other people can make it. I'm going to put it on the chat in Facebook.
Right. No, I appreciate that, and um, how that was landing for me. It's a necessary conversation, and I will be honored to listen and be a part of that, and provide commentary when when asked. But it is something that that came up within the conversation of reinvention. Sometimes sometimes we can't hear the new, and there is that, and people can grab that information to register for that, and so thank you for that. It sounds like um, this is something new that we're reinventing, or or re-upping this conversation around it, but there are so many similarities to other conversations that have happened, or that we've been a part of, that then there is this question of, you know I don't want to waste my time. Is this really this, and it's like, and I was thinking to myself, is that in the process of reinventing ourselves, is there a stage of not believing that the reinvention is possible?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and Bill, William or Bill?
Both. I am both. I'm my labels and I'm not my labels. You can.
I love that. I am my labels and I'm not my labels. Anyway, William, here the thing is that skepticism, cynicism, resignation, they're all part of our own humanity.
Right.
So, and there are stages, like seasons. Today I wake up and I have enthusiasm about what's possible, and I have a certain positivism about the actions I'm taking today, and I'm willing to take and share the torch of this enthusiasm with others, right? And that's
Hmm.
today. And then maybe a month from today, something happened, and I wake up with cynicism, wake up with resignation. I think this is all BS. What am I doing? Nobody even listens to me. And those are all feelings of a human being. So, like you just said, I am like my labels and I'm not my labels. It's about embracing it. So if today you are feeling excited, man, share it with the world, and man, take it on, and just like see if you can give that torch of change is possible to as many people. And then the day you're not, you might hear it from someone who you gave that torch to,
Right.
and then they will take you out from the rabbit hole and says, "Man, just show up, just come. You today you don't have to be leading this conversation. Just hang in there."
Right.
And it's all part of the conversation. That's kind of
Right.
how I see it.
Right. No, I totally get that. And I think it's a concept that I learned from you, of staying within the conversation. That's why this is one word conversation. The more that we are committed to stay in a conversation, the more that there's sometimes that we're leading, and there's sometimes that we're listening. There's really, but we're in it. And it is, the more that we stay in it, the more that we can have the the access to the power within it. And I really got that there are some days that I am very, encouraging and thoughtful, and some days I'm just like, I don't got it. That ain't me, right? Right? But instead of making that judgment, I can just be listening. That's the day of listening within
Or
the
don't,
conversation.
don't
Right.
just sit on Netflix and do nothing, right? Or
Right.
just be mindful and take pictures outside. It, I think people beat themselves a little too much on how they feel on that day.
Right.
Emotions are a little bit of a roller coaster. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down, and controlling them is even difficult. There are even chemical triggers in my brain that have me feel a particular way when in nature I am an enthusiastic positive human being, right? So
Right.
I think we should, part of reinventing ourselves for me is to just kind of allow myself to feel however I feel.
Hmm.
And today is William Brown's torch to take on enthusiasm, take on change, take on hope, and take on aligning people's conversation towards a unified America. And
Right.
today is not my turn, and I'm just going to give that torch to you.
Right.
And then
Hmm.
we'll see you tomorrow.
Right. No, yeah, and we'll see tomorrow. No, that is great. I mean, that is more freeing than, like I said, beating myself up. I am not this today. I'm just such a terrible person, right? And because that's what labels do to us. When we take a label on, let's as one of the labels that you show up fully in is a transformational coach, right? I am sure there are some days or there are some moments that you don't feel like that, and there is a question in your mind that, well, am I? Did I lose that? Am I no? And it's like, but that's not the truth. It is just at that moment, that's just not who you are. But you're still Giovanni. You're still in the conversation of transformation, and you're transforming in those moments of not talking about it too.
Yeah, 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 absolutely, absolutely.
And
I
so
see
this
Diana
another.
Chomley. It's in the house. I love that girl. I just called her before our meeting to ask her if she was mad at me because she wasn't returning my call. See how I'm venting now? I am
Right,
not
right.
right now.
Right. And we do that. We spend more time inventing stories and reinventing stories and kind of creating stuff, instead of just living our life. It is. Where is one area in? I guess let's look at business, because I'm a business owner myself, and sometimes I have these ideas, or these leanings that they hook me until they don't, right? And then I feel that, is that something that I need to stay in the process of inventing, or let go? Is that process? It's not even doubting if it works, it's the interests of it. Do I still want to invent this new thing? And it's like, sometimes within our life, or I'll speak for myself, within my life, this awareness of myself, of who I'm being and who I'm not being, causes me to, these stops and starts of, it's like tinkering, that happens, for me. That's that it's like you're creating something, and it's like years later you're still creating that something, right? I don't know what that is, but I'm still just tinkering away at it. Is there that process of staying with it, or deciding what you're creating, and just until completion? Or is there these, what, I don't need to, I need to pivot, or I need to move forward?
Yeah, I think the way you constructed the question led me to a big answer, right? So I'm going to kind of, in some degree, point to a few directions, and then hopefully you can invite me again, and then we can take that on even a little bit bigger.
Right.
So my life, a big portion of my life, a big passion for me is to support business owners growing their businesses, right? And
Right.
so there's different stages that a business owner might find themselves. There's the beginning stages, and then
Right.
there is when they have been in business for 2 or 3 years, and then they have reached a kind of a plateau, and then there is, and they're still a small business, and then there is a rather larger business. It's still a mid-sized business, but now you have 200 employees, 500 employees, 1,000 employees, and that's a
Right.
different kind of conversation.
Right.
right? To be listening for. And then there is you're a corporation, and now you have departments, and now you're trying to create sustainability within the departments, right?
Right.
You're like a business inside of businesses, right? So this kind
Right.
of like different listening. But if we looked at like how you said at the beginning of the question, well, if I have an idea, and I create the idea even though it's not going viral, I'm not getting momentum, do I
Right.
continue on it, or should I just plug into somebody else's idea, kind of a thing? That's kind of how I
Right.
heard the question, right?
Yes. Hmm.
So they both are valid. They both really work. The way I see it is, I'm a fan of other people's ideas, like myself. My idea is to be a fan and a support of other people's ideas. That's how I see my business,
Hmm.
right? And so I find ways for me to get better at giving people structure so that their ideas happen
Hmm.
and they take on life on their own in their businesses. So that's two things to start looking at. The When you're taking on an idea yourself in the context of business, it is really about answering a question that has to be in the background of all time. Do people like, do people want this? Do people need this? And what experience am I committed to for people to have around this product or around this service? Does
Right.
that make sense?
Yes. Absolutely. Yes. I really get that in, in the creation, in the recreation or reinventing, really recognizing what's the contribution, how people are going to experience it, and the need and the want. And I get that within the business context. I think really, and I've taken that on for my life too, and my relationships. That what how am I showing up in my relationships and for myself and everything, and so I can make a contribution to that. I think we can talk about this for hours, but I'm sure we don't have hours to kind of do that. I just really, is there any other thing that you want to leave us with, or really just say when we're looking at reinventing our life or reinventing our business, our just taking on reinvention, that you would say?
Yeah, yeah. And since we're wrapping up, I want to do an invitation and answer your
Okay.
question, right?
Okay.
So this Sunday, I just invited you to something on Saturday, but I now want to talk about Sunday. This Sunday, I have a workshop for people who are looking to reinvent themselves and create a turning point in their lives. And this is a workshop that is 3 hours long. And it's not an hour because it's not enough, and it's not more hours because I know people don't have that much time, right, for to introduce something. And this conversation is a workshop that gives people the tools to begin to create a turning point in their lives for the rest of their lives.
Hmm.
And just to give you a little bit of a sense of it, when someone is committed to something, like when they want to cause something and they want to create something, there are three things that they, in somewhere or another, they need to begin to develop a new relationship with. And that is, those three things are your circumstances, your emotions, and your commitments. A new relationship with your circumstances, a new relationship with your emotions, a new relationship with the commitments. Those three things are three different worlds for people, and usually they're collapsed. The circumstances are collapsed with their emotions, they're collapsed with their with their commitments, and they get stuck. People get
Right.
stuck. So their creativity, what they're up to, cannot flourish because they are wrapped up in some circumstance, they're wrapped up in some emotion, and therefore the commitment doesn't have a highway to take on. So on
Right.
Saturday, on Sunday at 4 p.m., we're going to be uncollapsing those things, and the kind of clarity that people are going to live after the workshop, it's completely unprecedented. And that's my
Mm.
promise. So here's how the promise is going to go. The cost of I didn't do it for free because I want people there that are actually up to something, not just checking
Right.
me out. So
Right.
the conversation is $20. Now, here's the promise. If it did not deliver a turning point in your life, you just write me back and say, just refund me the money, and I will just refund it. And I'm not going to ask any questions. That's how powerful the conversation is. I will just
Mm.
refund you the money if you did not feel like it is a turning point in your life. That's a big
Mm.
promise. It's a
Wow.
very big promise, a turning point in your life. And so, how to register?
Wow.
You go to www.turningpoint.expert. Turningpoint.expert. You go there and you register. And I'm going to be leading this with my business partner, and it's going to be phenomenal.
No, well, thank you for that. I mean, I totally got how we collapse everything, and having things collapse on each other, your circumstances and everything. It's totally different than the integration of, right? So there's, and so I think what I heard is, you're collapsing or uncoupling, a term that has been used in our space, of because there are some things that don't need to be together that are causing the resignation and the disappointment and everything, that not creating the turning point that you need. And so I so appreciate it. I really want to thank you and acknowledge you. Like I said, within my book, there was a character, the journey to stay you, that is an eagle, and it looks just like you, right? So, and that that reminded Will the turtle, that there is some there is some movement, there is some activity, there is a decision that you need to make, to live your life. And you were that voice for me that has caused me to show up in my life. And I just thank you for the work that you do, and the relationship that we have.
Man, thank you for letting me be the eagle, man. I was so honored to be a character in your book and an eagle. That is so amazing. That's bragging rights for the rest of my life. I talk about it in all my courses. Thank you, William, for allowing me to be part of that journey of your books, and thank you for having me be part of your audience. And for those of you who plugged in, it's just I love doing these conversations, particularly with you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm gonna put you back in the green room if you can stay there for a minute while I close the show, and we'll say our goodbyes from there. Thank you again.
Bye bye. Thank you. Bye bye.
Well, the level of reinvention that is showing up, in my life, it's kind of, as I said at the beginning of this conversation, it was a difficult word because I felt that I want to focus more on the invention, or my inventions that I have, and how things are showing up. But really having that second look, really that adaptability, and how Giovanni really framed it, in a way that we can take it on. How is reinvention showing up in your life? I would love to see that in the comments. And there are a number of opportunities for you to connect with Giovanni. They're going to be in our comments on this recording. But I will just say, as a testimonial, that's a conversation that is worth not just the investment, but the time and the commitment. I've realized that the more that I am committed, or look to my commitments, the more that I see the transformation in my life. Because there's a number of things that I say that I want, and that I want to see. But when I look at what I am really committed to, then the transformation and the recreation and the reinvention process begins. The world wants you, the world needs you, and the world is waiting for you. So go be you. Have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you tomorrow.